My boss fired me in front of everyone. 3 months later, he was sitting across from me in an interview. Part 1. Powerful hook. My boss pointed at the glass door and told security to take my access card before I could even speak. The whole office went quiet so fast that I could hear the air conditioner humming above us. 1 minute earlier, we were in our Monday briefing at Beko Logistics in Lagos. The next minute, Mr. Tunde Beko was holding up a printed bank statement and looking at me like I was a criminal. "Amara, explain this transfer," he said. I looked at the paper from where I stood. My name was on the approval line. My staff code was there too, but I had never seen that document before in my life. "I did not approve that," I said. He laughed, and that hurt more than his words. "Please," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "do not insult our intelligence." Then he said the sentence that broke something inside me. "You are fired, effective immediately. Security, walk her out." Nobody moved at first. My team avoided my eyes. The receptionist near the door held her breath. I remember seeing my cousin Sandra standing beside the front desk, one hand over her mouth, acting shocked. But there was something cold in her eyes. Something I did not understand then. I wanted to shout. I wanted to cry. I wanted to ask why he never called me privately. But I stood still, straightened my blouse, and handed over my ID card. As I turned to leave, Mr. Beko added one more thing. "And be grateful we are not calling the police." That was the moment everybody decided who I was. A thief. A liar. A disgrace. They were all wrong. Everything changed because of that one moment. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. Part 2. Character Introduction. My name is Amara Okafor. I was 32 years old then, and I lived in Surulere, Lagos. I was a senior accounts officer at Beko Logistics, a growing transport and supply company with big clients and bigger egos. I had worked there for almost 6 years. I was not the loud type. I was the one people trusted when numbers stopped making sense. I came early, left late, and checked everything twice. I believed money had to be respected, especially when you grew up without enough of it. I wore simple clothes, took public transport when fuel became too expensive, and saved every month no matter how small the amount was. I kept a notebook where I wrote every bill, every transfer, every plan. My dream was not luxury. My dream was peace. I wanted my own home one day, my own small accounting firm, and a life where nobody could use my kindness against me. People often called me too serious. Maybe I was. But life had taught me that one careless day could cost you 5 careful years. I was the kind of woman who packed lunch from home, while others ordered food every afternoon. I was the kind who would rather repair a phone than buy a new one. I was also the kind who sent money home before buying something nice for myself. At work, I had a reputation for being honest. Some people respected that. Others found it annoying. I did not flirt for favors. I did not gossip to get promoted. I did my job and went home. That quiet life worked for me, or at least I thought it did. Because while I was busy building a life with discipline, some people around me were busy studying my habits, my passwords, my trust, and my silence. I just did not know it yet. Part 3. Family Background. I came from a family that loved my help more than they loved me. My father died when I was 23. He had a stroke on a Wednesday evening and was buried by the next month. After that, everything changed in our family. My mother became harder. My younger brother, Chike, became more careless. and I became the person everybody called when life became expensive. We were originally from Enugu, but my mother lived in Ibadan with Chike after my father died. Chike was 4 years younger than me and had never really found direction. He started businesses every year and ended them every 6 months. Poultry, car parts, phone accessories, laundry pickup. Each idea began with confidence and ended with excuses. My mother always defended him. "He is a man," she would say. "He is still finding himself." Nobody ever said I was still finding myself. I was expected to be found already. When Chike needed rent, I paid. When my mother's blood pressure medicine finished, I sent money. When our aunt's daughter Sandra got admission to a short business course in Lagos, my mother begged me to take her in. "She is your cousin," she said. "Help her stand." So Sandra moved into my flat 2 years before the day I was fired. At first, I treated her like a younger sister. She was 26, pretty, lively, and always laughing. She loved nice wigs, long nails, and expensive perfumes she could not afford. She knew how to make people like her quickly. Men offered her help before she asked. Women told her secrets without knowing why. I used my connections to get her a temporary front desk job at Baco Logistics. I even taught her how the office worked. I showed her how to speak to clients, how to file records, and how to stay professional. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was believing blood made people safe. Sandra never paid rent while living with me. She bought clothes on weekends and left dishes in the sink. She borrowed my shoes without asking. She took my perfume and laughed when I complained. My mother always told me to be patient. "She is young," she said. "You are more mature." That sentence followed me all my life. When Chike called for money, my mother said I was mature. When Sandra crossed boundaries, my mother said I was mature. When family meetings happened without me, I was expected to understand because I was mature. I paid school fees for a cousin I barely knew. I contributed to church harvest at home. I sent money for our family roof repairs. Yet when people spoke about sacrifice, they praised Chike for trying. Nobody praised me for carrying what should have broken 2 people. Still, I never complained. I believed if I kept doing right, right would return to me one day. I believed family would remember who stood with them. I believed kindness created loyalty. I was wrong about all 3. Part 4. Hidden Secret. 2 weeks before I was fired, small things began to feel strange. It started with Sandra. She suddenly had more money than usual. New phone, new gold necklace, new heels still carrying the shop smell. When I asked where the money came from, she smiled and said, "A woman should have some secrets too." I laughed, but something about her tone stayed with me. Then Chike called me one night, sounding too cheerful for a man who usually needed money. "Big sis, stop worrying about me," he said. "Things are changing." I asked what that meant, but he only said, "You will see soon." 3 days later, my mother posted pictures in our family group chat from a land blessing ceremony in Enugu. I stared at the photos in silence. It was our late father's land. Men from church were there. My uncle was there. My mother was there. Chike was there. I was not invited. When I called my mother, she brushed it aside. "It was not important," she said. "Just small family discussion." I almost laughed at the insult. I was sending money every month to the same family discussing land without me. At work, things were also shifting. A vendor I trusted called to ask why his company had been removed from our payment list. I checked the system and saw that his details had been replaced by another supplier I did not recognize. The change was made using my staff login at 8:43 p.m. I was already home by then. I reported it to IT and copied my boss. Mr. Bako replied with only one sentence: "Handle quietly and avoid drama." That reply made me uneasy. The next day, I found Sandra in my office chair, smiling at my computer. She stood up quickly when she saw me. "I was just charging my phone," she said. I noticed my top drawer was slightly open. That was where I kept copies of my ID cards, signature stamp approvals, and my emergency banking token. Nothing looked missing. Still, I locked the drawer that evening for the first time in months. I should have done much more. Because the truth was already moving around me like smoke. I could smell it. I just could not see the fire yet. Part 5. Betrayal. The fire came on a Monday morning in front of everyone. After Mr. Bako fired me, I went home numb. Sandra arrived that evening, acting too soft, too careful. She placed tea in front of me like we were sisters sharing grief. "This office world is wicked," she said. I looked at her and asked one question. "Did you know anything?" Her eyes widened so perfectly that another woman might have believed her. "Amara, how could you even think that?" I said nothing more. That night, I opened my banking app to check my savings. My chest tightened. 2 failed attempts had been made to access my account the previous weekend. The device was not mine. The next morning, I went to my drawer for my document folder. It was there, but the inner envelope felt lighter. Copies of my national ID and tax papers were gone. I called Sandra at work. She did not answer. Then my brother called. His voice was not cheerful this time. It was defensive. "Please do not drag family into your office problem," he said. I sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" "People are talking," he said. "Mummy said you should settle this quietly." That was when I understood the betrayal was bigger than my job. They already knew something. Maybe everything. By evening, I learned the company accusation against me was serious. A false vendor account had received 18 million naira across 4 transfers over 7 weeks. Each approval carried my digital credentials. The address linked to the fake vendor was a small office in Yaba. I had never been there. Then came the final blow. A friend from HR called me privately and told me Sandra had spent almost an hour in Mr. Bako's office after I was escorted out. She left smiling. I felt sick. Not because of the money, because I suddenly saw my kindness standing in a room full of knives. I had housed Sandra. I had recommended her. I had defended Chike. I had financed my family. And now somebody had used my name to steal, then watched me fall in public. That pain was not about employment. It was about humiliation. It was about being offered up like a sacrifice by people who had eaten from my hands. I cried that night, but not loudly. I cried the way mature daughters cry, with one hand over their mouths so nobody hears. By morning, my tears were gone. What remained was something colder. Clarity. If I was going to survive, I needed facts. And facts do not care who shares your blood. Part 6. Investigation. I started with the one person I knew would tell me the truth even when it hurt. My university friend Adobe was now a lawyer in Lagos. I sent her a message and asked if we could meet after work hours. I almost typed "after work" before remembering I no longer had a job. We met at a quiet cafe near Ikeja. I told her everything from the vendor change to the missing documents. She listened without interrupting, then asked me the question that changed the direction of my life. Amara, what proof do you have that you were home when those approvals happened? I checked my phone immediately. Ride receipts, internet usage, a food delivery timestamp, a call with my mother, my estate gate log. I had more than I thought. Adobe nodded. Good, she said. Now stop being ashamed and start being organized. That sentence gave me strength. The next day, I wrote formally to the company requesting a full record of the alleged approvals, the audit trail, and my termination letter. I copied HR and the legal department. I also reported unauthorized access attempts on my bank account and requested device logs. Then I went to my estate manager and asked for entry camera records from the dates of the suspicious approvals. He was reluctant at first, but when I explained I had been accused of theft, he helped me. The footage showed me entering the estate before 7:15 p.m. on one of the key dates. I did not leave again that night. That should have freed me. It did not. Because 2 days later, the company's legal officer replied that internal evidence still implicated me. No apology, no caution, just cold language. I thought that was the worst part. I was completely wrong. Part 6. Investigation continued. Adobe helped me file a petition demanding forensic review of the digital approvals. We also asked for CCTV footage from the office corridors, especially near my office and the accounts unit. At the same time, I called an old colleague in IT named Femi. He owed me a favor from years earlier when I covered a mistake that could have cost him his job. I did not ask him to do anything illegal. I only asked him one question. Can a staff login be used from another system terminal? He answered in one breath. Yes, especially if the password is saved or known. My mind went straight to Sandra sitting in my chair. 3 days later, Femi called again from an unknown number. Your account was accessed from the front desk terminal twice, he whispered. One of those dates matches the fake vendor change. The front desk terminal. Sandra's desk. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. I asked him to email nothing. I only asked whether system logs could be preserved officially. He said yes, if requested during investigation. That was clue number 1. Clue number 2 came from somewhere I did not expect. The bank handling the fake vendor account responded to Adobe's formal letter. Because there was already a fraud complaint, they released limited registration details to the investigating authorities. The account holder was a company called East Tide Services. The director's name was Kelvin Ez. I knew that name. Kelvin was Chike's closest friend. I stared at the paper for a long time before speaking. My brother was inside this. I still did not know how deep it went. That same evening, I called my mother and asked her directly whether Chike had opened a business with Kelvin. She denied it too quickly. Why are you chasing shadows? She snapped. Face your own problem. Face your own problem. As if my problem had not already moved into the family home. We kept pushing. Adobe requested the Corporate Affairs Commission records for East Tide Services. The company had been registered just 4 months earlier. The contact address was not in Yaba. That was just a rented mailbox. The real supporting phone number on one of the forms belonged to Sandra. I remember closing my eyes when I saw it. Not because I was surprised anymore. Because betrayal becomes easier to name once proof arrives. But one question still remained. Was Sandra acting alone with Chike? Or was Mr. Bako part of it?
That answer came from the office cameras. After 2 weeks of pressure, the company finally released selected corridor footage to the police investigator handling the petition. Adobe was present when it was reviewed.
Later that night, she came to my flat with a flash drive and a face I will never forget. Sandra was seen entering my office after 8 p.m. on a day I had already gone home. She came out 9 minutes later, holding a file folder that looked exactly like mine. Then, 20 minutes later, she entered Mr. Baco's office. She stayed there for 34 minutes. There was no official reason for that. I thought I was ready for the truth. I was not ready for the next clue. A week later, the investigator obtained payment records showing one transfer from East Tide Services into a private account linked to a luxury hotel apartment in Victoria Island. The beneficiary name was not Tunde Baco directly. It was his wife's event company. Same surname, same circle, same greed. The puzzle was complete now, but we still needed something undeniable. Something that could not be explained away as coincidence. And that came from the person nobody noticed. The cleaner. Her name was Mama Ife. She had worked on our floor for years. People spoke around her like furniture because she was older and quiet. When investigators interviewed staff, she remembered seeing Sandra crying near the stairwell one evening. According to her, Mr. Baco had said in frustration, "Calm down. Amara will carry it. Just follow my instructions." When Adobe told me that, my hands shook. Not from anger, from relief. At last, the truth had a witness. Still, I did not know the worst was coming. Because the company's board decided to hold one final internal hearing before sending everything to full criminal prosecution. They wanted to protect the company name. And that hearing would place me in the same room with everyone who tried to bury me. Part 7. Big Reveal. The hearing took place on a Thursday afternoon in the boardroom where I had once presented clean audit reports with pride. This time, I entered as the accused woman who had refused to disappear. Mr. Baco was already there in a dark suit, pretending calm. Sandra sat at the far end, eyes red, lips tight. Chike was not invited, but his shadow was in every paper on that table. The board chairman asked me to speak first. I stood up slowly and thanked them for allowing the review. My voice was steady. I did not insult anyone. I did not raise my tone. I only told the truth. Part 7. Big Reveal continued. I explained my work routine, my home records, and the suspicious system access. Adobe then presented the timeline. Front desk login, false vendor switch, Sandra entering my office, Sandra entering Mr. Baco's office, payments approved through compromised credentials, the fake company linked to Kelvin, Kelvin linked to Chike, Sandra's phone number on the registration form, transfer from the fake vendor account into an entity connected to Mr. Baco's household. Nobody moved. Then the investigator played the corridor footage. Silence. Then he read Mama Ife's statement aloud. More silence. Mr. Baco tried to speak, but the chairman raised his hand. Sandra started crying first. Not soft tears. Hard, ugly tears of panic. She admitted she took copies of my documents from my drawer. She admitted Chike introduced Kelvin. She admitted the fake vendor was created with promises that the company was rich enough not to notice quickly. She also admitted Mr. Baco told her he would protect everyone if she stayed quiet. What broke the room was not her confession. It was her next sentence. He said nobody would believe Amara over him. That was the heart of it. Not just greed, confidence. Confidence that my silence, my calm nature, and my history of helping others would make me easy to crush. Mr. Bako denied everything until the investigator presented the transfer trail and phone records. Several calls between him and Sandra happened late at night on approval dates. One call lasted 17 minutes just after a fraudulent payment was processed. At that point, even he went quiet. The board chairman removed his glasses and looked at me with shame. For the first time since the nightmare began, people saw me clearly. Not as a suspect. As a woman they had failed. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I only said one sentence. I asked for a private explanation that morning, and you chose public humiliation instead. Nobody answered, because there was nothing left to say. Part 8. Consequences. Justice did not come with music or applause. It came with paperwork, resignations, and broken faces. Mr. Bako was suspended that same day and later dismissed. The case moved beyond the company into a formal fraud investigation. Sandra lost her job immediately. Kelvin was arrested first. Chike turned himself in through a lawyer after days of hiding. My mother called me crying when officers visited her house with questions. For once, I did not rush to comfort her. I loved my mother, but love without boundaries had nearly destroyed me. I told her I would not lie to protect anyone. She called me hard-hearted. I said, maybe truth feels cruel to people who live on denial. That conversation changed our relationship forever. Chike's fiancée ended their engagement after learning the wedding money came from stolen funds. Our extended family, the same people who once praised him in group chats, suddenly went silent. Nobody wanted to speak loudly about loyalty anymore. The company sent me a formal apology and compensation for wrongful termination, reputational damage, and emotional distress. It did not erase what happened. But it mattered that the truth was written, stamped, and signed. I was invited to return to my old role. I refused. Some doors should stay closed even after they apologize. Trust, once buried publicly, does not grow back in the same soil. I wanted a new place, a new table, a new name attached to my mornings. I thought the story was ending there. I was wrong again. Because 3 months after I walked out of that office in disgrace, life placed me in a room I could never have imagined. And the man across from me could barely hold my gaze. Part 9. New Beginning. A former client of Bako Logistics named Mrs. Nkem Adeyemi had followed the case quietly through industry contacts. She owned a fast-growing supply chain technology company called Transit Core. Months earlier, I had helped resolve one of her payment disputes with honesty, even when it created more work for me. She remembered. After the board hearing, she reached out and asked if I would meet her. We spoke for almost 2 hours. She told me something I still carry in my heart. Competence is common, she said. Character is rare. She offered me a role as head of internal control and compliance. I accepted. Part 9. New Beginnings continued. That job changed my life. For the first time, I worked somewhere that valued careful people. My voice mattered in meetings. My systems were implemented. My reports were read. I rented a smaller but brighter flat closer to work. I slept better. I smiled more. I even started volunteering on Saturdays with a women's legal support group that helped workers facing harassment and wrongful dismissal. Pain had made me sharper, but peace made me whole again. Then, one Monday morning, our HR director asked if I could join a final interview panel for a senior operations consultant. It was an important role, and they wanted my judgment because of my fraud risk experience. I agreed without thinking much of it. When the candidate file was placed in front of me, I froze. Tunde Bako, my former boss. The same man who had called security on me. The same man who thought nobody would believe me over him. For a full minute, I just stared at his name. Then I closed the file and breathed deeply. By the time he walked into the interview room, I was calm. He stopped at the door when he saw me. His face lost color. For the first time in my life, I watched Tunde Bako become unsure. He sat across from me, adjusted his tie, and tried to smile. Nobody in the room knew our history except HR and the CEO. They had already been briefed after I asked whether I should excuse myself. They told me to stay. Not for revenge, for transparency. The interview began. He spoke about leadership, ethics, crisis management, and accountability. Every word sounded polished. Every sentence sounded practiced. Then it was my turn to ask questions. I folded my hands and looked directly at him. "Mr. Bako," I said, "how do you handle situations where an innocent employee is publicly blamed for fraud approved through compromised controls?" The room went still. He swallowed hard. Then I placed a document on the table. It was the official case summary. His hands trembled before he even touched it. In that moment, I understood something powerful. Life does not always shout when justice comes. Sometimes it simply asks the right question in the right room. Part 10. Emotional ending. He did not get the job. That was the smallest part of the story. The biggest part was what I felt when he left. Not joy, not victory. Peace. Real peace. Because by then, I no longer needed him to fall for me to stand. I was already standing. I had built something he could not fire me from. My name was clean. My future was mine. And my heart, though scarred, was no longer begging to be chosen by people who only loved what I could carry for them. My relationship with my mother became distant, then slowly respectful. She learned I would help only where truth lived. Chike wrote me a letter months later from a rehabilitation program tied to his sentencing agreement. I forgave him in my heart, but I kept my distance. Sandra also sent a message asking for another chance. I wished her healing, not access. That was enough. Today, when young women ask me how I stayed calm, I tell them calm is not weakness. Calm is power with discipline. Calm is refusing to let guilty people write your ending. Family is not the people who use your silence against you. Family is the people who protect your dignity when you are not in the room. And if nobody does that for you, then start with yourself. Protect your name. Protect your peace. Protect your boundaries. Because sometimes the worst public shame becomes the door to your private rebirth. And sometimes losing the people you trusted becomes the first step toward finding yourself.